Gwinnett Place Mall here behind me, well, it's no longer an operating mall. I have been inside of it when it was open, but now it just sits here abandoned like a ghost town. It's actually owned by the city of Duluth, Georgia now, and it's only used for filming. Besides, I think there's like a Macy's on the outside and a few buildings like that. The whole mall itself, it's a giant place. It's only used for filming now. Right now they're actually filming a Christmas movie inside of the mall that's called Dashing Through the Snow, starring Kevin Hart. It's a Disney movie. It's going to be on like Disney Plus or whatever. But for those Stranger Things fans out there, you might remember this mall from season 3 of Stranger Things. This was Starcourt Mall. In fact, the entrance where everything happened in that show is this entrance right here behind me. They changed the name up here on the top to say Starcourt Mall and all that. This is the spot where all those scenes were filmed. But even still, with all of this TV and movie filming history, very few people actually remember that back in 2017, inside of the food court area here in the mall, a young Georgia State University sophomore was brutally murdered. Today, I'm here at Gwinnett Place Mall, and I'm going to be telling this story, and we're going to be talking about the murder of Silling man. It's so sad what happened to her. Before I get into the story, I just thought I would make mention that in season 3 of Stranger Things, the murder that we're going to be talking about today and the crime scene, they played a part in them setting up the food court for filming the show then. The subway inside of the food court, it was branded as Hawkins Heroes in the show. They left that entire thing looking like a subway. They just placed a sign up above it that said Hawkins Heroes on it. And they did that because they didn't want to change or disturb a whole lot with any of those interiors of the subway because of this story that we're going to talk about today. They couldn't go in the back room. That's where the crime scene was. And if you go back and watch season 3, you can actually see, you can spot the subway or the Hawkins Heroes. And that is where the events of today's story took place. Early in October of 2017, Silling Mann, she was a psychology student at Georgia State University. She met a man named Emmett Davis Jr. After they met, Silling's family said that she just started acting differently. On October the 8th of 2017, she hadn't spoken to her family in a few days, and they actually reported her missing. But just 2 days later, she shows up at their house. They call and let the police department know, hey, she's back home. But on October the 10th, Silling left again, forcing her family to call and make another missing persons report. And since she left on October the 10th, her family has had zero contact with her at all. Law enforcement knows that she was okay a month later on November the 20th because she actually stopped by another mall here in Georgia, Parameter Mall. She once worked at a clothing store there, and she stopped to pick up a paycheck that they were holding for her. The manager, or her old boss, who she went and got the paycheck from, said that she was completely unrecognizable from what she was when she did work there. The manager said that when she came in, she had on like a thermal jumpsuit type thing and a big puffy jacket with a hood on that was up over her head. She was wearing sunglasses, but the manager could see that her face was all bruised up and one of her eyes was completely swollen shut under the glasses. Silling, she did have a cell phone, and so did her boyfriend, but for whatever reason, they weren't answering it for Silling's family when they called. Law enforcement was told that even though the phone belonged to Silling, like it was given to her by her parents, Emmett Davis kept it on him at all times, and he wouldn't let her have it. It's doubtful that he even told her that her parents were trying to call her. On December the 21st of 2017, a maintenance worker right here at Gwinnett Place Mall, they were going into the back of the old Subway building that was vacant in the food court area. And they were going back into the maintenance room to get something out of there when they discovered the remains of a young woman and a grisly crime scene. Law enforcement was quickly called here to the mall, and an investigation got underway, not only to identify the person, the deceased person they found, but they also wanted to figure out what had happened to them. Very quickly it was discovered that the remains found in the back room of the Subway were that of Silling Man. Because the Subway building had been vacant for some time, people just, they weren't going in and out of there every day. Law enforcement determined that Silling's body had been laying in that back room of the Subway for about 2 weeks before she was finally discovered. In the police report, it said that the entire kitchen area of the Subway was completely covered in Silling's hair and her blood. It was just all over the place. The coroner notes said that many of her ribs had been broken, and several of her fingers were also broken on her right hand. So the detectives, they went out to discover where Silling and her boyfriend had been since her family had last talked to her back in October. It turns out that for a few months leading up to the discovery of her remains, the two of them, they had been staying right here at an extended stay hotel, which is just right near the mall. Law enforcement were able to trace their movements, and 2 weeks prior to Silling's remains being discovered, they were able to narrow down the last time the two of them were together. And on that day, the two of them had taken an Uber from the hotel right over here to the mall. Both her cell phone and Emmett Davis Jr.'s cell phone pinged from cell towers here at the mall, placing them here together. At the crime scene inside of the vacant Subway, law enforcement found a bloody fingerprint that was like on a door frame in the back room. They were able to positively identify that fingerprint as belonging to Emmett Davis Jr., and they identified the blood that made the fingerprint as belonging to Silling Man. Law enforcement pretty much knew who their suspect was from very early on, from the very beginning, and they very quickly went looking for Emmett Davis Jr. While they were looking for him, they ran across a friend of his who told them that he once witnessed Emmett Davis Jr. beat a man nearly to death with his bare hands. This friend told police that he had no doubt in his mind that Davis was the one who had done this to Silling Man. He said that in the few months they were together, he would frequently notice bruises and stuff on Silling's face. He told police that Davis was so controlling over Silling to the point where he forced her to dress just like him, wearing his clothes so that she didn't have anything on revealing. He forced her against her will into doing drugs and to having sex for money. He forced her to get tattoos that matched his, including one time when he forced her to get a facial tattoo that she didn't want. She begged and she pleaded with him to not make her do this, that she would never be able to get a real job with a tattoo all over her face. And because she, did that, Emmett lost it on her. This friend said that Emmett beat her so bad that by the time he got done, she couldn't even move. And as soon as she finally did regain consciousness and she could move on her own, he took her straight to the tattoo parlor and made her get this tattoo across her face, even though she didn't want to. This friend also told police that Emmett made Silling stay within just a few feet of him at all times. Like, she couldn't wander off, she couldn't go into a store by herself. She was forced to stay with him anytime they were out together. There was no doubt to this friend that Emmett Davis had beaten Silling several times until she was just completely afraid to go against him with anything. Lastly, this friend told law enforcement that Silling man was a completely different person just before her death than she was just before she met Emmett Davis Jr. In the 2 weeks since Silling man died and her remains were discovered, Emmett Davis left the state of Georgia. He fled. It's unclear exactly where he went. All they know is that he fled the state. Law enforcement, during that time, they discovered her remains and they pieced all the evidence together and they started looking for him, but he was nowhere to be found. Many months later, in June of 2018, all of a sudden, one day out of the blue, law enforcement got a tip that Emmett Davis Jr. had returned to Georgia and that he was staying with a friend in Lawrenceville, Georgia. So detectives, they quickly rushed to the address. Emmett Davis Jr. was there. He was apprehended and he was arrested. He was immediately booked into the Gwinnett County Jail and charged with Silling man's murder. To date, I know that Emmett Davis Jr. is still sitting in jail. He's still charged with her murder, but he has yet to go to trial for these crimes, for killing Silling. They have taken it in front of a grand jury and he has been indicted and he has a trial date. At this point, we're just waiting on that time to get here and for his trial to begin. COVID happened during all this, and I'm sure that's why it's gotten backed up. But we're talking about from 2018 to 2022. That's over 3 years. So one would expect Emmett Davis Jr.'s trial for the murder of Silling man should be coming up anytime now. Anytime. Once any more information becomes available, I will keep you guys informed. Like always, once the trial happens, we'll follow it and make sure that Silling man gets justice. It's absolutely horrible what this man was capable of and what he did to this just young girl who still had all of her life left to live. That's going to do it for this episode today. The murder of Silling man here at Gwinnett Place Mall, Starcourt Mall, whatever you want to call it. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. Thank you all. I will see you again tomorrow. Please, all of you, stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.